What's good, folks? Family, friends, loved ones, enemies, frenemies, wizards, witches, muggles, mudbloods, people of Middle Earth to another episode of Disguised Coverage, part, of course, of the Cover One Sports Network and the only show in existence, I promise to you, I swear to you, that gives you an equal amount of blueberries in each muffin. I'm your host, Anthony Prohaska. Find me on Twitter at pro__ant. That's pro, 2_ANT. Find me on TikTok under the exact same handle. In tonight's episode of Disguised Coverage, another primetime game on the docket for the Buffalo Bills this week as they face off against Aaron Rodgers and the Green Bay Packers this Sunday, live under the lights in Buffalo. And with that being said, we're going to dive into some Bills-Packers matchups in the first half of this episode, really getting some insight into the Green Bay Packers, where they currently are, what's their state, what's going on with the offense, what's going on with the defense. This is a team that a lot of people had high hopes for, but they've kind of, stumbled a little bit, to say it lightly and put it lightly, out of the gate. We're going to dive into that, what this team is, who they are, some paths to victory for them, really dive into the X's and O's scheme structure of this matchup. Then on the back end, as we do here, we're going to dive into stock up and stock down, coming out of the bye week and really still coming off of that Bills victory in Kansas City 2 weeks ago. But without further ado, I bring my guest in at this time, Mr. Peter Bukowski, host of Locked on Packers, creator of The Leap. Fantastic name, by the way. I love clever names that tie into like what you cover and what you do. So very well said and very well done. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm really excited to have you on.
I'm excited to be here. I've been a fan of the work that you guys do for a long time, even though obviously I do not cover the Bills, but it's a very cool product that you guys put out. Content is awesome. And I have to say it has influenced some of what I do here, because I do not get as, I would say, in the weeds as you do with the football minutia, but I try, and it encouraged me to say, you don't have to dumb down the content for an audience. The audience will find you if you're putting out good stuff. And you guys were a big part of that. I didn't tell you that off air. I wanted to tell you that on air, because I think it's really cool. And I appreciate the work you guys do.
Oh, that's tremendous to hear. Thank you so much for that compliment. That's legitimately very awesome to hear, especially, like I told you off air, how much I respect and appreciate your work. And that's ironic because, like, it's a little chicken egg scenario. Like, I started gravitating towards you because of watching you, post clips and breakdowns, and anybody who talks, you can see like the little clues when people post things on Twitter and the verbiage that they use or what they pick out in a video. I'm like, this guy's talking scheme and this guy's talking structure and X's and O's. And I like that. And yeah, you are one of my go-tos for the Green Bay Packers and just, your knowledge of football in general. So that's really awesome to hear you kind of reciprocate that love and appreciation. Again, thank you very much for taking the time to join me on tonight's episode. And without further ado, I know we want to get you in and get you out because you are a very busy man. You also have a tremendous background. I want to tell you that. I appreciate it. Yeah, well done. Very well done. Very well done. You deserve it. Let's dive right into it. Buffalo Bills, Green Bay Packers, anything and everything. Let's start with the state of the Green Bay Packers. They come into this game off of a...
Do we have to?
I was going to say, we cannot. We could talk about something else. We could talk about like fun foods.
Yeah. Items. Have you been watching Andor?
Yeah, right. Anything. Let's talk about anything.
Can we talk House of the Dragon? What'd you think of the finale?
Yeah, right. Are you gonna catch caught up on like Lord of the Rings? You watch Kenobi? Like
haven't done Lord of the Rings yet.
I haven't caught up with that either. I just finished Kenobi. I'm like super backlogged and backtracked. But this is going well. We don't have to talk about Packers. And everybody's just like, oh, all the people who came in for that are like, you know what? Let's talk about that. Let's talk about.
They want to talk about Matt LaFleur not running so much outside zone anymore, and we're here going, all right. So the character arcs in no.
Here's what I did like. Here's my storyboard. Here's what they should have done. Oh, man, that's very good. Green Bay Packers state of this team coming into this game. Yeah. I feel like each week it's just kind of been, after even starting with week one, after the loss in Minnesota, it's just been like, they'll be fine. And then I feel like, or at least I've been continuing to say that week after week, but now some of those problems and some of those warts continue to resurface.
Yeah.
What's the state of this team coming into this game? 3-4. Another ugly loss in their eyes, and off of losing to the Jets 2 weeks ago at home, losing to the Giants in London, teams that on paper these Packers team is better than. What's their state coming into this game?
Yeah, it's one of those funny things because the way that the schedule has gone is actually exactly like every game, and so in every game it is just a little play here, a little missed assignment here. It is Sammy Watkins not being on the line of scrimmage when he's supposed to be on the line of scrimmage, when you have a tight end coming in motion and now you've got two guys moving before the snap and it's a penalty. Like it's that detail, but then there's 6 of those plays. So like each individual mistake is not a huge mistake. They're not doing what they did in week 1 and just busting coverages and letting guys run wide open and screwing up basic, quarters coverage against the exact kind of plays that every team runs to stress quarters coverage. Like they're not doing that anymore, which is good, but it's these little things. And so you look at it and you go, okay, well, week 1, they kind of have thrown week 1 away every year of the Matt LaFleur era. Like this is just sort of their MO.
Last year was the one against New Orleans, right?
Where they just no-show, fully no-show. And they didn't no-show against Minnesota, but that was like 3 plays that they busted coverages, and that's the difference in the game. Christian Watson drops the 75-yard walk-in touchdown. And this is a perfect example. 75-yard walk-in touchdown on the first drive. You miss it. You go down the field, you have 4th and 1 at the goal line. You don't get it. Like it's those things, like they drove the ball all the way down. Christian Watson gets wide open against Patrick Peterson. That's the good. The bad is you didn't finish the play. And so you say, okay, that loss, we can make sense of that loss. You go in, you beat Tampa. You feel like, okay, this team they're heading in the right direction. They beat the crap out of the Bears. You do what you're supposed to do there. You barely beat Tampa Bay, but you're like, okay, whatever, 3-1. You go to London, and I think in a way doesn't that look like a better loss now than it did at the time? Like that at the time, everyone just went like the Giants stink.
Yeah.
But now the Giants keep inexplicably winning.
It's funny on both sides. Like, people are being like, is that a good win for the Giants? And then it's like, or is that a pretty decent loss for the Packers now?
Right.
Like,
and so that feels different. It's the same. If you go back and look, until this Commanders one, it was you had the 5-1 Vikings and you had the 6-1 Giants, and the 4-2 Jets are the teams that the Packers lost to. And then it's the Commanders. And it's the same thing. It's 3 plays, 4 plays, 5 plays. And I think Aaron Rodgers put it really well with Pat McAfee. He said, he estimated that about 20% of their plays right now, they have mental mistakes. And that if it's 50 plays, they have 10 with mental mistakes. And last year and the year before, it was like 5. The difference between 20% and 10% is only 5 plays. But as you know, anyone who watches, I think it's better when you watch the tape, it becomes more apparent to you that every game, no matter what the score is 5 plays.
Yes.
And it's the team that makes them and a team that doesn't. And if you make 3 and they make 2, it's probably a close game. If they make 5 and you make 0, then you get blown out. But it's always 5 plays, because down to down, play to play, it's the NFL. Like these are all good players. Everybody can do this. It's those 5 plays. And so if you're giving away 5 extra plays, now a game where you're leading by 2 scores against the Giants, you give away 3-4 plays in the second half, you're going to get beat. You're leading by 2 scores against Washington. It's 3-4 plays. It's the official blows a ridiculous illegal contact because it's 6 yards down the field and not 5. And you lose a scoop and score opportunity to really put a game away against the Commanders. And then the offense stalls and the defense, is gassed at the end of that game. So it's these little things adding up, that little things taken in just that micro sense, not that big a deal. But when you have 5, 6, now all of a sudden that's a problem. And their schedule's sort of been the same way. 1 loss you can explain. 3 in a row, now you're going, what's going on?
Yeah.
Like where do they go from here? And I think there are answers to those questions, and I'm sure we'll get to some of them. But we thought it would be better. We thought it would be better. Everyone thought it would be better. The Packers thought it would be better.
It's funny you mentioned that, that illegal contact penalty, because when I was watching that game and I saw Rashawn Gary just keeps going around the arc, just burst right.
They couldn't block Rashawn Gary.
No, he had a tremendous game, and he gets pushed to the outside. Behind he steps up, and he retraces and goes all the way through, strip. Rasul Douglas picks it up and houses it. And I literally was like, well, that's game. Yeah. And then it gets called back, and I was like, oh. And then Washington goes down and scores. It's exactly right. Like, I love that point that you mentioned. It's those details, and a lot of times it's explosive plays or it's turnovers or something in that nature. The pendulum swings one way, and does it swing back the other, or does it stay on that side? Yep. And the Packers just seem to be,
they're stuck on that side.
Yes, they seem to be on the wrong side of the pendulum.
You look at the Patriots game, for example. That game looks close at the end. The Packers dominated that game, start to finish, basically.
Yeah.
And Romeo Doubs has a chance to make a beautiful throw from Aaron Rodgers. He catches that in the end zone. It's a touchdown. He catches it, goes to the ground. The ball moves, incomplete. And they have to settle for a field goal that allows the Patriots to come down and give them a chance in overtime. If he catches that, we're not really worried about it. Like, we're not talking about it. If Christian Watson catches that 75-yard walk-in touchdown on the first play of the Minnesota game, that whole game could be different. You never know what those tack-on effects are. And it's the same. Like, the Packers had a double-digit lead against the Giants. But then in the second half, it's one play where they get Saquon loose, Quay Walker and Devondre Campbell blow the communication on a play. Quay Walker in man coverage against the tight end. Devondre is signaling to him to pass that off. And Quay is going, pass what off? This is my guy in man coverage. And so it's just one of those things where, like, okay, now Saquon is wide open and it's a 40-yard play. And those are just the little things that can swing a game in a game where you've dominated. Like, if the Packers could only play 30 minutes, they'd be how many games look like 7-0. I guess they were losing to the Patriots, but in the other games, they'd be probably 6-1 or 5-2. They've blown two double-digit leads against the Commanders and the Giants because in the second half, the offense just sort of like goes into a shell. And again, it's these little things. It's on 4th and 1. They have this little, it's a swing, and then there's different names for the route, but it's basically an inside release, and then it becomes sort of like an inside slot fade. And Sammy Watkins is running it, and Rodgers throws the swing right away. Corner triggers downhill. Rodgers mis-ID'd the coverage. If he IDs the coverage, it's a walk-in touchdown for Sammy Watkins. And the game is Packers probably win if they convert that. So, like, though it's just like one play here, one play there, and their margin for error is it's here. It's razor thin because Christian Watson's hurt. Randall Cobb is hurt. They find out the morning of the game, Zach Tom has to play left tackle. That
was wild.
And played pretty well, by the way, I thought.
Yeah, he did. He had a good game.
Against Montez Sweat, who is a dog.
Yeah.
So they're still a really talented team. It's these details, and it's mistakes, man, that they just weren't making last year. That's the weird thing. And that Rodgers wasn't making last year. But I thought Nate Tice, who does a great job over at The Athletic, made a great point. And that is Aaron Rodgers is so used to having Davante Adams, who can be the single receiver side when you've got a stack to the opposite side. And can we curse on here?
Button. Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead. You do you.
Well, I'm quoting Nate, and Nate says Davante Adams was the fuck the route guy.
Yes.
Fuck the route. I'm throwing the backside glance. And they don't have the fuck the route guy anymore. And so Rodgers is having to read out these concepts, and he doesn't trust his blocking.
Yes.
So he's not reading out the concepts. It's if the first guy's not there, it's panic mode time. And he's just eating the sack rather than trying to extend plays. And so that part of it, I think the blocking was much better against Washington. You got Royce Newman off the field. The right guard just cannot start for the Packers anymore. He's a very nice backup guard who can spot start for you, can't be an every down starter for you. They made major changes to their offensive line. It's a credit to Adam Stenavich and Luke Butkus, who, yes, is in that Butkus family, son of Dick Butkus.
Nice.
And if you ever see him, look up a picture of Luke Butkus. Looks like an offensive line coach.
Yeah.
I mean, just screams, I'm an offensive line coach in the best possible way. I love it. They did a great job getting those guys ready. And Zach Tom said, like, I kind of knew watching Bakhtiari in practice this week, like he wasn't going to be good to go. And it's just like day to day, you never know. Bakhtiari's out there. He looks good. 2 weeks ago against the Jets, shut down Carl Lawson. Played awesome. And then the next week, swelling in his knee, can't play.
Yeah.
And so that's the tough part. This is not the get right week for the Packers in all likelihood, but I think it could come. The question is, have you banked too many losses by the time you get there that now you've dug yourself too far home? And they still have to play the Eagles, who just got Bob Quinn. They still have to play the Cowboys. They still have to go to Miami. They still host the Rams. They still have to play the Vikings again. They have to play the Lions twice. And the Bears, I think I did their whole schedule. Like, they've got to probably get 7 wins out of that.
Yeah.
And they can.
Yeah.
They're going to be favored. Like, coming into the year, they were favored against all of those teams. Coming into the year, they were only not favored in 2 games, at Buffalo and at Tampa. And they already won at Tampa.
Yes.
So if I told you, like if I told the average Packer fan, like in week 7, they were like, we knew that they were only underdogs in 2 games and they won at Tampa, you'd be like, they're undefeated right now then.
Yeah, they're good.
This is like 6-1 against 7-0. Like that's what's going to happen. And that's kind of the matchup we thought we were going to get. I still kind of think like it's going to be a good game. I just think like because the Packers' backs are against the wall, Aaron Rodgers has heard a lot of this, a lot of it from me about his play. And that's he kind of needs that. He kind of needs that edge, that chip on his shoulder. And I'm sort of waiting for Rodgers to just be like, you know what, F this, and go full Vagar from Game of Thrones and just start eating dudes,
I think that's like that expectation, right? Like everybody keeps thinking, well, like, okay, like this week there's no messing around. I thought the same thing with I thought it would be the Washington game. Like their secondary's not that good.
Well, I thought it'd be the Giants game, and then I thought it'd be the Jets game, and then I thought it'd be the Commanders game. And so now I'm just down the road. Maybe they can't do it. I don't know.
And that's the question. And real quick. So Peter, we got a rule. Anytime we get super chats and donations on the show, we have to bring it right up right away. And this is from Ned. He's a longtime viewer. He's fantastic. Thank you very much for being here, Ned. And thank you for your super chat and your donation.
Shout out, Ned.
Yeah, shout out, Ned. And this one is directed towards both of us, but mainly you. Ned wants to know, and this is right up your alley. He says, Peter, in your opinion, what percentage of the offensive woes is on Rodgers versus all the other factors?
Okay, the percentage thing is tough for me.
Yes.
You
don't have to put a hard percentage on it.
So, but here's what I think is the crucial part of this. The offensive line, we knew you're bringing 2 guys back off ACL, David Bakhtiari and Elton Jenkins, and you're probably trying to incorporate the rookie Zach Tom, who's played really well in preseason. You're probably going to have to move guys around. That's going to be a work in progress, right? And you bring in Sammy Watkins, Alan Lazard role is being elevated. Romeo Doubs shows out in camp. He looks awesome. Christian Watson, who was hurt for a lot of training camp, but in spring ball looked awesome. This guy, I hope he can play on Sunday. The speed is unbelievable. You watched him at North Dakota State and you went, yeah, but these are FCS guys. Like once he gets on an NFL field, it's not going to translate. He is lightning.
Even on that FCS tape, he's pulling away from guys and there's like 15, 20 yards.
It looks fake.
Yeah, it's that.
Some of the college tape looks legitimately fake where he is no one else is on the screen. And then they show the replay and he didn't even run a route. It's just a post route. And he's just that much faster than everybody else, erasing the safety angle. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
But so we knew that the receiver part was going to be work in progress, right? And we knew it was probably going to take this coaching staff a little while to figure out what they had. Aaron Rodgers is a 4-time MVP, the 2-time reigning league MVP.
Yep.
The thing we did not count on is Aaron Rodgers taking a big step back in his play. And that's been what happened. So again, the percentage thing is tough for me because the receivers dropping balls, they had 5 drops by PFF on Sunday. They had 6.
Not getting a lot of separation.
2 weeks ago. Not getting a lot of separation, and I don't know if it was you guys who posted the clip. I think it was a Cover One. It might have even been the main Cover One account, but it was a Bills play. And it was a scissor concept with Diggs on the corner. And I was like, you guys, offense does not have to be hard. Diggs barely runs a route on this play. He's not cooking some corner at the line and he's got a perfect route stem and snaps him off at the top of his break. Like that's not what this was. This was leverage. This was concept, attacking defensive rules. And he's wide open to the corner because the defensive back, it's confusing, but because that corner, the cornerback to that side is out leveraged. And so they're not getting great separation in man coverage, especially on 3rd down. That's the problem. They've got to stay out of 3rd and we have to throw situations.
Yep.
But there are plenty of other times when they're open based on leverage, based on design. This is still a really well-designed offense. It's the details. Aaron Rodgers has been harping on this. And veteran guys, Randall Cobb and Sammy Watkins running in the same area. And it's just sort of like, guys, you can't do this. I know I don't to the point where sometimes I'm like, I don't know which one of them is wrong, but I know one of them is wrong.
Someone's wrong.
Someone is wrong on this, because one of the things that can be tricky with the Packers is they'll run the same concept 5 times in a game.
Yep.
And one of them, they'll tag it. And then you're like, okay, did they tag this or did someone run the wrong route? You don't know all the time. And so that's what makes this complex. Like they run this boot action, and everyone runs this. And so you have that it's a flood, right? And so you have the corner clear out, and then you got the guy coming across. Yeah. And instead of running the corner, Romeo Doubs runs the corner post. But the middle field safety is there, and he's running, but the corner to that side is up. If he just runs the corner, it's 6.
This is from the Washington game, correct?
This is from the Washington game.
Yes, and Rodgers throws it like it's going to be the corner, but Doubs is going over to the left, and so it's
Matt LaFleur confirmed. Yes, that's normally the sail route on that concept. They tagged it, hoping to get that safety to wet his pants, and it wasn't the safety who did it; it was the corner.
Yeah. And
then it's like, okay, if that's Davante Adams, he just runs the corner, right? If that's Stephon Diggs, he sticks with the corner because he sees open space.
Yeah.
Romeo Doubs is a rookie trying to be perfect.
Stuck to the route.
And you see, if you watch the play,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
He runs the most half-hearted post off the corner because he's sort of going, shit, I don't know if I should be running this.
It's almost like he gets stuck in the field. Like his body's like,
right.
No,
he's just sort of like, oh no,
corner.
like I should just run the corner, but I don't want to get yelled at by Aaron Rodgers. And so he doesn't. And then, of course, Rodgers. Now, the other thing I'll say about that play, and this I think goes to Ned's question, Rodgers watches Doubs come back to the post.
Yeah.
And still throws it 15 yards outside.
Yeah, he still throws the corner.
And so it's like.
And it still almost gets complete a little bit. Like Doubs turns a little.
Well, Doubs gets turned around and gets to the ball. And I think Rodgers did I'm trying to prove a point throw, by throwing it to the corner.
Yeah.
And actually, and I know you're not supposed to throw late over the middle and all that, but Aaron Rodgers does not give a shit about the rules. Just like Josh Allen, he will throw late over the middle and be fine because they have the arm talent to do it, right?
Yeah.
But I think he threw, I'm making a point throw versus I'm trying to complete a ball throw. He still had a chance to complete the pass.
Correct.
And I think a little bit more to the hash instead of it ends up like 5 yards off the hash.
Yeah.
5 yards, what I like to say east of the hash toward the sideline.
Nice.
And if it's on the hash, there's a chance. He obviously doesn't want to bring the safety into play and give him a chance on the throw, whatever. And he's rolling and it's a tough play. But like these are the details that they're missing right now. And some of that, not all of that is on Aaron Rodgers, but you see him miss swing routes, just like running back in the flat and it's off. They had a play on 3rd and 10 against the Commanders.
To Aaron Jones, where he throws it a little too far behind him, and if it's kind of
high and outside, high and up the field, or behind the line of scrimmage,
and Jones has to turn behind him, catch it,
and he's still on 3rd and 7 or 3rd and 10 gets 7 yards. It's like, well, if you put it on him, it's Aaron Jones. He's been the best running back in the league at creating this season, yards above expectation. Like if you look at those charts, he's up here, and everyone else is like somewhere else. Like he's just been that good as a running back. So. A lot of the responsibility when you're the best player on the field and you're not playing up to par. Yeah. It's got to fall on you, man. Like that's just the reality with great, with great talent comes great responsibility. Right. Nice. And so if you're supposed to be the guy, you can't play like he's 24th in EPA per dropback. Like he's behind Justin Fields in EPA per dropback. Like that, there's no excuse for that. You have to play better.
Yeah, that was a very, very well said breakdown. I expected nothing less from you. Speaking of EPA with him, I tweeted this out yesterday or the day before. You actually retweeted it. Just from a total EPA perspective.
Christ, yeah.
This is wild. This is wild. So there are 43 QBs who have thrown at least 25 passes this year. Aaron Rodgers is 37th out of those 43 QBs in total EPA. And here's some of the QBs that are above him. Joe Flacco, Jacoby Brissett, Jameis Winston, Kenny Pickett, Cooper Rush, Brett Rippon, Zach Wilson, Skylar Thompson, and Teddy Bridgewater. No disrespect to those guys. I pulled those names for the obvious reason why I pulled those names. But it's wild to see him. I love that you mentioned that swing pass from Aaron Jones because So I watched 3 full Packers games on the All 22, the Giants game, the Jets game, and then this Washington game. I watched a lot over the last couple of days as well to rewatch them. And that's why so many plays are like, you're mentioning plays. I'm like, which game was that? Because there's so many plays in my head. And yeah, like Jones is such a playmaker with the ball in his hands. And they have match numbers. It's 2-on-2 on that boundary side of the field. The safety ends up coming over to make it the 3-on-2. But if he puts that on Jones's numbers or allows him to just run with it, you're exactly right. It's a first down. Jones has to reach completely behind him, extend, makes an athletic play to catch it, then gets upfield, goes to the sideline, jukes the defender, and comes up 3 yards short. And there's so many of those. The pass to Robert Tonyan on the first drive against the Jets that it looked like it got bounced in the air and Sauce takes it, but it was an incomplete pass. Tonyan's open.
Wide open.
Rodgers just shorts it and he dirts it and it makes the throw harder than it needs to be. And so
3rd and 2, Romeo Doubs, same thing. Right there in his face, double clutches it and then dirts it. And then is going, what are we doing? And I think that was Sammy Watkins, again, veterans making mistakes. Sammy Watkins fakakta spacing on that one. And Romeo Doubs is right. And I don't know what Sammy Watkins is doing on that route. But the funny thing is, you know what the funny thing is? Watch it back on All 22, and I said this. I do a TV copy breakdown sort of right away. Just sort of for myself. It's sort of like taking my own notes. Like, okay, let me flag this play so I can go back and look at it on All 22. And I even tweeted it out. I go, I just know that this play is going to show Sammy Watkins is out the gate. I just know it. And sure enough, but he screwed up the route. And I don't know if he ran the wrong route or I think he ran the route that he thought he was supposed to run on the 4th down play, but I think it was supposed to be that swing screen and to him, and that's why Rodgers had to double clutch. When it's like trying to guess busted coverages, like it's always the hardest thing to try and
especially with an offense that's so tagged up and
right. Exactly. Again, this is the problem, but still Rodgers is looking right at Romeo Doubs, hit him in the 8-7,
puts it low.
Rodgers is the kind of quarterback, and so is Josh Allen, where if he wants to put the ball on the backside shoulder of that guy to lead him away from a defender, he can do that to within 4 inches, right? That's an NFL quarterback. Most guys can do stuff like that, especially Dobbs is 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. This is just an easy, simple completion.
Step up, make the throw.
And if you watch it from the end zone angle, his feet are totally off. He has time in the pocket to make a throw, and he's wide open, and he tries to just sort of sling one. It's why? Same thing on a swing play from the Jets game where he misses AJ Dillon. And it's not like it's going to be a big play, but it's just indicative of sort of the issues right now. He is in the pocket, has time to throw a swing, and the footwork is totally off. And it's okay, that's fine. Josh Allen has wonky footwork too, and Mahomes has wonky footwork, and Rodgers has made a living with crazy footwork.
Yeah.
But you have time to set your feet and throw. Why don't you? And that's where it's just sort of is this because of the pressure that is coming? They couldn't block the Jets, and that was the big problem there. So that's a separate thing. They blocked up Washington.
Yes.
And Rodgers is still, there was a play, and I tweeted the play out. He got jumpy in the pocket. It was a little mesh where Romeo Doubs is coming across the formation. Romeo Doubs is coming wide open. Rodgers looks right at him and throws the check down to Aaron Jones.
Yes.
For a 6-yard loss
out of the backfield.
And if he waits half a second more, he's got not only Romeo Doubs, but our guy Big Bob Tonyan underneath down the field, and the linebackers 4 yards behind him. So why did you go immediately to the check down? That's not, there was a really great, I recommend, it's not Packers related. John Meerdink over at Acme Packing Company wrote a really good piece today that was basically titled "Football is Not Unknowable." And he pointed out we have Matt LaFleur's playbook going back to 2016, right? Nick Saban has his match quarter stuff is on Twitter, is on YouTube.
Yes,
you can watch it. Rich Bisaccia has a special teams class on YouTube. You can watch it. We know what these guys are trying to do for the most part. So we know on that route concept, they're not trying to throw the swing. There's plenty of times when they clear out a side in zone coverage specifically to throw a swing. They love to do it. It's sort of like they're in basketball where it's like, I just got to take the ball to the hoop because these jump shots aren't going in.
Yeah.
Like if they can't get anything going against zone coverage, they'll just clear out a side and throw a swing to Aaron Jones or AJ Dillon and try and see if they can just go make something happen. That's not what this was.
Yeah.
This was a play designed to get the ball to Romeo Doubs. He is buck naked, crossing the middle of the field, and Rodgers just gets antsy. So back to Ned's question, like this is part of the problem here. That can't be how they play, but it's just like Rodgers goes through these phases where he just gets a little antsy, and all he needs is one game for it to click, and all of a sudden it clicks. This happened last year. Go back and look at the EPA numbers. Go back and look at his deep passing numbers through the first 8 weeks last year. Could not hit the broad side of a barn. And all of a sudden, it's the Cardinals game. Davante Adams doesn't play. Marquez Valdez-Scantling doesn't play. Alan Lazard doesn't play. He's throwing to Randall Cobb and guys you have not heard of. And it was Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon.
Yep.
And all of a sudden, coming out of that game, even though he's not throwing deep passes and he's not slinging the ball all over the yard, it just sort of gave everyone confidence. Oh, we can win this game. We can do anything.
Yep. And
they just need that game. And so I think I said this on Locked on Packers yesterday. This is an opportunity for Green Bay. Go out. You don't even have to win. Go out and hang with the Bills. Have it be 21-24 late in the game and Josh Allen has to lead an MVP drive and win the game. And you go, okay, we can hang with this team. Now it's 11 points for a reason.
Yeah.
Buffalo has just been a lot better than Green Bay this season. But that doesn't mean that if the Packers play their best game, they can't go in and hang with Buffalo, because I think they can. Now, if Trey White were playing and the safeties were all good and like all that stuff, like it's Buffalo's best is still certainly better than Green Bay's best. But Bills fans know, what did they lose 5 of 7 at one point last year? Lost to the Jaguars last year. Like this
don't do that.
this team is capable of brain farts. And I think the Packers run of 3 in a row proves every team is capable of those. And every team, Taylor Heineke played his ass off last week. After he threw the pick 6, that dude face down pressure constantly.
Yeah.
PFF, this is wild. PFF had the Packers for 29 pressures last week. 29 pressures. I think 5 guys had 5 or more. And so it's just like, but it didn't matter because with the game on the line, Taylor Heineke with Kenny Clark barreling down in his face and Jair Alexander in one-on-one man coverage on the outside.
Who had a tremendous game the whole game, locking everybody down.
Right. And it's with the game on the line. Terry McLaurin makes the play. Taylor Heineke makes the throw, a great throw, a trust throw to the sideline.
Big boy throw.
It's a reminder. These are all NFL players. And if you don't play your best game, and I'm sure that's the message from Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers in that locker room, like, hey, if we go out and play our best game, they have to play a good game. They have to play their best game to beat us. And that's the truth. That's the reality of it.
So much.
Everyone say hi to my toddler who's yelling in the background.
Oh, my toddler yelling in the background. So much for this Packers offense this year has just been so tight,
hard,
and so condensed. Yes, everything is hard. And what I also think is interesting too, at this point, we all know, they're living horizontally and the vertical game is not there. And so much of this offense, I was wondering how much would change coming into this year, losing Davante Adams, because exactly what you mentioned, what Nate Tice said early in this episode, that easy button is gone. That receiver who is the best receiver in football and who Aaron Rodgers had a tremendous chemistry with. There was so much where exactly whatever play there was, it was just like, I'm going to Davante. And it would work no matter what. Deep back shoulder throws, quick little smoke screen action type thing where if he's like, oh, this corner's 7 yards off, cool, I'm just going to chuck it to Davante and he'll go and make a play. That easy button was consistently there. Davante's gone. You bring in Randall Cobb, Watson's banged up, or you're trying to rely on these rookies. Alan Lazard is kind of like your de facto number 1. And I wondered how much of this team, their identity in terms of their passing game, I wondered how much it would change. And so I was looking at percentages in preparation for this episode and kind of pairing with what I saw in the film and what I thought was kind of not crazy, but not much has really changed from a personnel standpoint and a plan standpoint. This year, 22% RPO usage, which is third. Last year, they were at 21%. The year before, they were at 14. So a big jump from 2020, but only a 1
They
percentage
spammed
point higher
RPOs
than
last year. They lived it with RPOs.
Yes,
Yeah, last year.
they love it. This year, 19% screen, most in the league. Last year, it was 14. The year before, it was 13. So a 5 percentage point jump, which, again, makes sense with how horizontal they're living. And
it's also what, 2-3 plays a game, probably?
Yeah, basically.
Maybe less. Yeah.
And it adds up with, 67% of Aaron Rodgers' throws have come from 9 yards or less. 42% of
this is the big difference.
9 yards.
This is the big difference last year to this year. The ADOT, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Now, last year, they became much more a layups and three-pointers team. It was quick game, especially against all the too high, which is now what everybody is doing. And look, the Bills had to find solutions for it too, right? Everyone's playing everyone against too high.
You got to redo it.
And they don't have those solutions this year. The quick game is not there. And part of that is they don't have ball winners. They just don't have the guy who can on 3rd and 6 get you 8. And I thought that was going to be like, it was for a little while, Randall Cobb. And Packer fans started calling it 3rd and Cobb because it was just like, you put him in the slot with a 2-way go. And he looked like, the funny thing against the Giants was for the first half, it was like, wow, the Packers trading for 24-year-old Randall Cobb was really a good idea for them because he just looked like that.
Yeah. And it also helps that it's a guy that Rodgers trusts immensely. Right. And also
is Alan Lazard. And we saw that on the back shoulder against the Commanders, like a 30-yard back shoulder. Like that's first of all, filth. Second of all, that takes so much trust and chemistry and reps. And for the Packers, like they need to find this vertical passing game because I think they need to introduce some variance. They just don't have the guys. Last year with Davante Adams and MVS and the continuity that they had there, they had the bodies to go 8, 10, 12 plays and score.
Yeah.
They don't this year.
Yeah.
And so what they need to do, if they can, is introduce some variance. They need to find ways to create shots. Now, the problem is their play action shot game has been non-existent. They have not hit a play action shot this year. Now they're creating explosives because they are just, when they do run play action, it is either that boot or the half roll. And then the other big one for them is strike. It's just a little in-breaker on the backside off play action. And they run it. They used to run it a lot from under center. The 49ers run it a ton from under center. And the Packers like to do it from shotgun. Is that my favorite thing that they do that from shotgun? No, it is not, because everyone can see the mesh point. Part of the deal with play action is you're creating some uncertainty. But because of the Packers run game and because Aaron Jones has been so good this year, you're able to get those linebackers in conflict. Now, Tremaine Edmonds, Matt Milano, those guys are really good. It's not like, we saw the Patriots put Roquan Smith in hell on play action. Like not every group of linebackers is like that. Washington, this was my biggest problem with what happened last week. And this is where the coaching comes in. The Washington linebackers, they take the cheese on play action like every time.
Yeah, they were biting hard.
And the Packers only ran it 5 times. And part of that is Matt LaFleur is a little afraid of Aaron Rodgers. No. Aaron Rodgers does not like to turn his back to the defense. And so Matt LaFleur admitted last year that the protection questions were part of the reason why they were so much less into play action last season than 2020. They killed teams off play action in 2020. Play action shot plays, they just didn't matter who was out there. They were getting chunk plays.
Yeah, that's been such a huge staple. Like MVS would live on those shots. Rodgers would pick them up.
And and you got circle posts and all the good stuff. But the thing is they're still running Yankee. They still dagger. They're still going to live in those concepts. But they do it in just a different kind of way. And the spacing has been a disaster. It's those little details. They need to, like I said, create some more variance. I think they need to get Romeo Doubs vertical more often. They're using him a little too much as the sort of clear out guy to the opposite side of the concept side when they've got he's running. This is a great example is that play to Aaron Jones where Rodgers leads him a little too far out of bounds. And he's running. I can't remember if it was a slot fade or just a straight go.
The one against the Jets?
Yes.
It's like
and
a,
he
it's like a,
leads him
it's
too
like
far out
a,
of
it's like a
bounds.
slant and go. Yeah. And,
Yeah,
and
Romeo
Jones has him
Dobbs on the
beat.
opposite side runs a double move out and up and just torches the corner. And that was where he lived in college at Nevada. He was a vertical. I think he averaged 18 yards a catch or something crazy.
He was a deep guy.
He was a vertical guy, and they're throwing him swings and screens and slants. And like, he can do that stuff. He's pretty decent after the catch.
Mm-hmm.
They need to get him vertical. And the offense really it's amazing how different the offense is when Christian Watson is out there. His speed as a jet guy, they only ran 4 motions last week.
And their motion percentage on the year is it's 44%, down 10 percentage points to last year. And
it's down from last year because Matt LaFleur has this thing that really grinds my gears, if I can borrow from Peter Griffin.
Nice.
That if he doesn't have the right jet guy, he just will bury the jet.
Okay.
And so they had Tyler Ervin in 2020, and when Tyler Ervin was on the field, they just killed teams with jet motion.
Motion all day. I can picture him right now, that 32, and
right,
motion.
Right, and killed teams with him on the field with the jet motion. And then he got hurt, and they had no answers. And it was just sort of like, wait, how can that be? Like, it can't be 32. It's got to. You can throw a guy over there. And Christian Watson, though, the thing is, like, he scored a touchdown against the Patriots on it wasn't a jet, but he's in motion, and it was a little like end around. That's what it ends up being. And he scores because he can fly. Yeah. You watch the Packers, their yard per carry with motion. At one point earlier in the season, they were averaging like something crazy, like 8 yards per carry with jet motion and like 3 yards per carry without. And it was just sort of like, can we just press the easy button? Like, just press the easy button. The jet, and you watched it on tape. It was fun to watch because you would watch the linebackers, especially the end linebacker, whoever it was, whether they were stack or on the ball, and they just don't know what to do because they see Christian Watson flying across the field, and they're like, "Okay, what do I do?" And Christian Watson has, this is my favorite thing a scout has ever said to me. Christian Watson has oh shit speed, and just him running makes a linebacker go, oh shit.
Yeah, deer in headlights. You're just like,
because if that guy has the ball, I'm done. I'm toast, right? And so you would watch the lanes just open up. Ben Fennell on Twitter, really good X's and O's guy. If you're not following him, check him out. He posted a picture of it, I think today, in fact, where he was just like, look at these holes that they open up when they use jet motion. It's like it's parting of the Red Sea, what they're able to do, and they just haven't done it. Because Christian Watson's been in and out of the lineup, dealing with a hamstring injury now. And so I would doubt he's going to play. 2 weeks ago, they were talking about putting him in IR just to let it fully heal. I would be surprised if he is limited all week, if he plays on Sunday. But they might not have a choice because Allen Lazard's dealing with a shoulder injury.
Yep.
Randall Cobb's on IR. Sammy Watkins is coming back from a hamstring injury. Like, their healthy receivers are Sammy Watkins, Romeo Dobbs, Amari Rodgers. And then, like, you're talking about Juwan Winfrey, who's a practice squad guy. You're talking about Samori Toure, who is undrafted free agent or 7th round pick. I think it's 7th round pick. But he's like, a 25-year-old rookie from Nebraska. Like, there's just the upside there is limited. And so you might need Christian Watson to be out there. But that's a wrinkle that I think, something to watch for on Sunday is, are they using jet motion in the run game? And then something that we're seeing a lot of teams do, and I'm pretty sure I've seen the Bills do it, is using that jet motion man as your lead blocker on Sundays. Oh yeah,
that surge motion action that the Niners love to do. And
the Niners love it. The Rams love it. The Shanahan tree teams love it.
Yep.
And when something works, other teams start doing it. So
that league.
Be interesting to see there. So that's one of those fun wrinkles that I think that the Packers can incorporate, but they need to find that vertical element because they need some 4-play 76-yard drives,
Yeah.
That we know the Bills can create. And if for no other reason, then we know the Bills can create them in this scenario, especially. So Packers can't press. One of the interesting things I was looking at the Bills, I think the number is they're either 5th or 6th in EPA per play. But they're 14th in drop back success rate, which to me says, and I think this bears it out watching the games, they will rally and tackle. And they're a very good rally and tackle team, but that means you just have to stay patient. And it's hard to do because Von Miller and Ed Oliver and Greg Rousseau and those guys make it really difficult to stay patient. And then they're just so disciplined on the back end. All of the concepts that you use to stress zone coverage, it's not that they don't work, but they work less than they do against other teams because this team, doesn't matter who's playing out there, they're just so disciplined.
Yes. They pass off so well. They communicate. Everybody does their job.
It's so obnoxious to watch because I'm just like, couldn't the Packers one time do this? No, the thing is it's people complain about man coverage versus zone coverage, and everyone wants everyone to man up. It's just like, I don't think you understand zone coverage when it's executed properly is so beautiful to watch on the back end. It's like a dance, everyone moving in harmony and concert. And watching the 49ers play defense, it's so infuriating. It really is so infuriating because I'm just like, watching Hufanga and Warner fly around, but play within themselves. They're never out of position, never out of control. They pass off magnificently. And it's like their corners can suck, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah, they never have.
They've never had a good corner. Like the Kaepernick teams, those defenses were incredible. You cannot name the corners on those teams, but you can name Dante Whitner and Deshaun Golson and Alden Smith and Justin
Patrick
Smith
Willis,
and the linebackers Bowman and Willis. You cannot tell me. All right, I can name one, Tyrone Culliver. You cannot tell me any of the other.
Culliver. That's the only one I got.
And I only remember Culliver's name because he's a bigot. That's the only. He made a bunch of homophobic remarks. That's the only thing That's the only reason I remember that guy's name.
So not great. So it's not for play.
not a great reason for me to remember him. So yeah, they need to introduce some variance, but at the same time, like this is the problem that the Bills create for you, is the Packers offense needs to get this variance, but the Bills say, if you're going to score, it's going to be 10 plays, 12 plays, 80 yards.
Yeah, they make you work for it.
And the Packers are not built for that. So I think what Green Bay is going to have to do is win a war in the trenches. And this is again, this has been so frustrating. So like the Packers on first down, 9th in EPA per drop back.
Okay.
But they're second in success rate running the ball. And so you go, okay, they should run the ball. But if you look at the EPA, much better because passing is more valuable than running.
Correct.
To run the ball. But then you go, okay, but then it's incomplete. And now you're at 2nd and 10. And all the numbers say, don't run the ball. Right? So now you can't run the ball. You can, but
you
probably don't. And so now you may end up throwing it 3 straight times. And it's like, well, then how are you getting Aaron Jones the ball? And how are you controlling the clock? And how are you controlling the line of scrimmage? So right now, Green Bay, they need to be more productive on first down with their running game. They need to go to play action more. I don't care if Rodgers doesn't want to do it. You have to do it because this is the best thing for the offense. Packers had 7 first down runs for 20 yards against Washington. This is one of the best first down teams offensively in the league. They did not play well on first down against Washington. So you have to get yourself in better down and distances. I think they had 6 third downs. Only 1 was fewer than 8 yards.
Yeah, and I think they were 0 for 6 on third down, correct?
And they were 0 for 6. The only third downs they converted do not count as conversions because they're penalties that helped them convert. They had a 3rd and a mile. They had a 3rd and 12. They had a couple 3rd and 10s. And then they had the 3rd and 2 where Rodgers darts to throw to Dobbs. It's just sort of like, and then they had a 3rd and 10 where they got 9.5, Amari Rodgers, and they go on 4th down and Rodgers panics and throws the swing when he should miss IDs the coverage and should have thrown the.
Just this negative snowball. I'm sorry. I feel like this is frustrating for you.
Yeah,
well, maybe
therapy
cathartic.
For me.
I was gonna say maybe cathartic. Yeah, this was we'll get you out of here. We made commitment on that time. I wish you could stay and chop it up more. You were tremendously insightful. I'm glad that hopefully again this was.
I felt like I was rambling. So
no, you crushed it. I appreciate all the insight, knowledge, and everything you were able to add from that Packers side. As we look forward to this matchup because it's a good one. It's an exciting one. Anytime I feel like Packers Bills isn't a matchup that we've always seen a ton, and it's always cool to see. I don't know, like that logo and those colors, in Buffalo, and especially this time, prime time, and it's Rodgers and it's Allen. There's still so much potential and so many variables for this game.
It's still Aaron Rodgers against Josh Allen, and the Packers. Like, if you want to be okay, so that there are a lot of reasons to be down on the Packers and all that stuff, and I think look, I'm there with you, but at the same time, the 2 highest rated primetime quarterbacks since 1970 are playing in this football game.
Oh, that's a tremendous stat.
So it's Josh Allen is 1, Aaron Rodgers is 2.
Jordan Love is
108.
the other. Okay, sorry.
108 and 105 passer ratings in primetime, and Aaron Rodgers has won 13 straight primetime games.
Ooh, I like that one. And then you combine that with the notion of the Packers are over all time in Buffalo.
Never, the only team in the NFL they have not beat on the road. And 2014, the last time the Packers played in Buffalo, Jordy Nelson drops the pass. The Packers lose. They lose
Bakari
the one
Rambo
seed,
game.
and they have to go to Seattle in the NFC Championship game. And we all remember how that ended in one of the stupidest games to have ever been played in any sport ever anywhere.
Stupid onside kick.
Coming to my TED Talk.
Stupid onside kick. Stupid Clinton Dix on the 2-point conversion.
I've never seen a safety misplay a ball on a 5-yard throw worse than that. But I've also never seen a quarterback attempt a 5-yard throw from 40 yards away.
That's fair. So it's kind of like a catch-22 and you don't know. It's one of those like, you're playing against a computer, but you do some move that's so unexpected that it makes like the computer break down.
Right, the computer's brain breaks. And you're just like, wait.
It doesn't know how to read what just happened. I really think that's what happened. Like the trajectory and
just short-circuited.
Dix was just like, well, this is easy. And then like you can watch him go like, and just fall apart. And tremendously frustrating. But what wasn't frustrating was your appearance here. You crushed it. Let all the people know, just in case they don't know, where they can find you again, what you do, all that kind of stuff. And then we'll send you on your way.
So the podcast is Locked On Packers. And I get it. You're not a Packers fan if you're watching this probably, but I have another show on the Locked On Podcast Network called Locked On Sports Today. It's all sports under 20 minutes. Think the first 10 minutes of Sports Center, the big stories, the headlines, and our local hosts. We have a huge network. I mean, basically every team is covered in college, in pros. So we have local experts on everything. It's not Stephen A. Smith talking about the 76ers. It is our 76ers host talking about the 76ers. So it's a big difference. Our guy, Joe Marino from Locked On Bills, has been on the show. He does great work. In fact, the Packers, Bills, we have a crossover every Thursday. So Locked On Packers, listen to it on the Locked On Packers feed, but it's Joe and me doing 30 minutes. It's on YouTube as well. Locked On Packers on YouTube. And then The Leap is the newsletter. I won't be offended if you don't subscribe, but it's The Leap at substack.com. And every Monday we do the newsletter's free. So talking about, if you want to get the latest from last Monday, that newsletter is free on at theleap.substack.com. And then obviously we'll be talking about this game on Monday on the newsletter as well. So I appreciate you having me, man.
No, of course. You crushed it. I appreciate the kind words and your insight. And I'm glad you were able to plug the 75 things that you're a part of here. So very well done.
Lot. Yeah, it's a lot.
No worries. I appreciate you making the time. I'll send you on your way. Godspeed and enjoy the weekend.
Thanks, man. Talk to you later.
Later. Tremendous guest, Mr. Peter Bukowski. A lot of information, a lot to download and take in, everything that he really broke down and put in. But what we're going to do, we're going to keep, yes, very well said, Will, another great guest. The content and insightful, all of those things. Yes, he crushed. Now what we're going to do, so we're going to take everything that, Peter gave us here, right? This information and all this content. I've got a lot of information and content to break down. I want to really focus on these matchup pieces and a lot of, tying the things together that Peter mentioned. He gave us all that information. He's a film guy and also an analytics and advanced metrics guy, which I think is a beautiful thing. I am very much obviously into the film and the advanced metrics, and I grinded a bunch of Packers tape. I have really this year, not just in preparation for this game, but because they're just such an interesting team from I think the perspective that everyone's talking about, like, is Aaron Rodgers is kind of like falling off a cliff. And is it Aaron Rodgers? Is it Matt LaFleur? Is it a lack of Davante Adams? Like, what's going on with the offensive line? All these issues. And so I've been watching a decent amount of Packers tape all year, but then especially in preparation for this episode. So we're going to take everything that Peter gave us in conjunction with what I grinded on the tape and put it all together and really go through these game deciding matchups. Now, real quick, got to mention the sponsor. You folks know the best pizza in Buffalo, New York. Hands down, One Pie Pizza. The online menu can be found in the episode show notes. Go to that site, get yourself some One Pie Pizza, delicious cup and char pepperoni, fantastic cheese to sauce ratio. This cannot be understated. Or overstated, I should say. You don't take a bite and the cheese comes off. It's just perfect. It stays. Great consistency in the crust and the dough. They make their own homemade blue cheese, and they do a ton of initiatives for the community, partnering with the SPCA, partnering with Roswell to try and knock out cancer. Toys for Tots, just a lot. They're good people making great food. Go get yourself some One Pie Pizza. Again, the online menu is found in the episode show notes, and they have a pretty sick logo. Oh, so close. I never point to it correctly. Oh, pretty sick logo up there in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Get yourself some One Pie Pizza. let's dive back into these matchups. Also, as you folks know, as we start to go through this and then work our way into stock up, stock down on the back end of this episode, I want to know, what are you folks looking for? What are you concerned about? What are you content about or confident in? Throw it up in the chat. Obviously, super chats get priority. Shout out again to Ned for his super chat earlier. I will bring those up right away. One, because I respect the monetary donation. Two, the color attracts my eyes and it takes me away from my notes. But questions, thoughts, comments, concerns, anything and everything, throw it up into the chat. Also, I want to mention, it was mentioned earlier in the chat in a little bit. If you're here right now, and there are a pretty decent amount of you in here, please drop a like on this video. It goes a long way towards helping the show and the brand to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. And we're trying to grow as much as we can and progress and ride this thing until the wheels fall off. So any and every ounce of support and help is tremendously appreciated. If you're watching this on YouTube right now, live or later, please, 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 and thank you, drop a like on this video. I thought of holding the stream hostage and being like, I'm not saying another word until everybody drops a like, but I'm not that kind of guy. But I appreciate you folks. Let's dive into these matchups. So one of the pieces that Peter mentioned and that Ned asked the question about, and it's been coming through the chat, like this whole Aaron Rodgers notion of this offense. How much of it is on Aaron Rodgers? How much of it is on Matt LaFleur? How much of it is on the offensive line or the receivers or the weaponry? And not to give like a blanket answer or an easy statement answer, it's all like a little bit of everything. I'm going to start with the concept and design and everything that's going on. This isn't news. The Packers are living in a horizontal world. Aaron Rodgers has had 15 seasons as a starting quarterback. He's only had 2 in which his average depth of target was below 8. Once in 2017 and this year. His average depth of target this year is 7. It's tremendously low. If you watch the Packers coming into this game, it's almost like a rinse and repeat every week. It's just slant flats. It's RPO, it's swing routes and bubble screens and smoke screens. It's Robert Tonyan on a 6-yard hitch. It's a swing pass out of the backfield to Aaron Jones. Like I mentioned, Aaron Rodgers is, passing, how you divvy that up based on zone. 67.2% of his passes have come at 9 yards or less, 25% behind the line of scrimmage, and 42.2% 0 to 9 yards. They are living in the short and barely, if any, into the low intermediate. If you go on Next Gen Stats and you look up his passing charts, you will just see there's not a lot of attempts downfield. Like Peter mentioned, they don't have a vertical game to this team. And it's twofold. It's partly due to attempts. They're not taking a ton of shots downfield, but when they are, they're not executing. Rodgers is off. And whether it's Rodgers himself because of fundamentals and mechanics and accuracy, or it's a lack of rapport with his receivers or the receivers aren't executing, that vertical aspect of that team is not there. So they are living very much in this horizontal world. And Aaron Rodgers, just some more numbers, out of the 37 quarterbacks with at least 20% of dropbacks, he is tied for 30th in average depth of target at 7 yards. He has the 12th highest pressures converted into sack percentage at 21.7%, but he also pairs that with the 9th highest quarterback rating when pressured. And like I mentioned earlier, 22% of this offense relies on RPOs. That's the 3rd most. 19% screen usage. That is the most in the league. 69% zone. 11th, but we know, that's a Matt LaFleur offense. He will mix in some gap. And then here's some more interesting notes. So this personnel package usage, I mentioned this earlier. Jim throws out how many are watching and versus the likes ratio. We need more likes, folks. You hurt my heart, but I appreciate you folks. We look at the personnel usage. So this team loses Davante Adams. They draft 2 rookies. One you would think they had more hope for with Christian Watson taking him early, but then they get Romeo Doubs, who looks tremendous all preseason, and then is thrust into a more needed role based on injury, based on usage for the rest of this grouping. But you lose Davante Adams, and your strength is not the wide receiver group. You have strengths in the running back room. A.J. Dillon, Aaron Jones, I would say even Robert Tonyan is like a good tight end, and you have the potential to put more tight ends on the field to help your run game, but also mix in some play action. But this team hasn't really diverted from their 11 personnel usage, which means 3 wide receivers. 60% 11 personnel this year, which isn't too high. It's only 19th. It's on the lower end of the spectrum. But what's very interesting is when you juxtapose it with how much 11 personnel they used last year, which was 58%. They've actually gone up in 11 personnel usage 2 percentage points, despite losing the best receiver in football and their best weapon on offense. They haven't changed too much. 12 personnel. You would think, okay, so more tight end sets, maybe, function in the run game, this and that. 27%, 12 personnel, which is the sixth most in the league, but they were at 31% last year, which was the second most. So they increased their 11 personnel usage. They decreased their 12 personnel usage. They up their 21 personnel usage. So 2 running backs on the field at the same time, which makes sense. We've seen more of that pony package, which means 2 genuine actual tailbacks in there, and Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon. 11%, 21 personnel, which is the 11th most. Last year it was less than 6%. So they've increased in that way. But this team hasn't changed too much. And I think that's part of the Matt LaFleur piece. And I guess you can tie it back to Aaron Rodgers as well. But you had a dramatic shift with Davante Adams leaving this Green Bay Packers team. It changed how they run the offense. This offense is always going, last year and the years before, it ran through Davante Adams. If he had an easy matchup, it doesn't matter what the play call is. They're spamming that matchup to Davante Adams, no matter what. The targets, the usage, he can run every single route in the route tree, and he and Aaron Rodgers had this tremendous chemistry. You remove him, and now you've got receivers who don't have that chemistry with Aaron Rodgers. You have Allen Lazard, who's got the chemistry, but no disrespect to him, doesn't have the skill set built to put an offense on his shoulders or be a true number 1 wide receiver. They bring Randall Cobb back, who has tremendous rapport with Rodgers, but his best days are behind him, and I don't think that's an insult to say. Christian Watson's been banged up. You've got Doubs, who's trying to find his way in the NFL game and learn how to play with Aaron Rodgers. There's been all these inconsistencies, and everything for this offense has been hard. They are living in a way that they've lived in previous years, but now without the Davante Adams and without that main rapport piece, they're not able to be as efficient or be as explosive. This is an offense that used to be surgical. Again, they've always had a ton of RPO usage, right? And Aaron Rodgers has worked that short to low intermediate with those off-platform throws and not really getting square to the line, just firing it in there. Like, he's done that. He's been surgical. This offense is known for that, or has been known for that. The problem is now they're still trying to live in that surgical world, but they are not executing with that surgical precision. They are not in that mold anymore. And it's partly because Davante Adams is gone. It's also partly because Aaron Rodgers is just not executing. He is not making the throws that you normally see. Peter talked about it earlier. Those throws where, he snaps it, he doesn't even have to turn. He can just kind of open up a little and then just flick his arm, and it's just a nice little dart and a 6-yard completion. You get 6 yards. Now those throws are going high, or they're going behind the running back, or they're going into the dirt. He's missing those throws short, the easy ones that he should complete. He's not really getting through his progressions, whether it's issues on the offensive line, whether it's him not trusting his receivers. He's not letting the plays play out. He's not letting the reads and the progression play out. He's taking the easy throws to be like, I'm just getting out of my hands, forget it. We're not seeing Aaron Rodgers create outside of the pocket too much and use his legs to extend plays and create explosives out of it. He's having running lanes at times where he can scramble and he can get upfield and get some yards, and he's not taking it. He's making these throws that he doesn't need to make, and he's making them in random spurts and at random spurts and in random moments, and he's often not executing even with those throws when he's making them. And whether it's downfield, whether it's in the backfield, Rodgers isn't the Aaron Rodgers that we've seen from years past. I don't know if it's a mental thing, but mechanically he's not there. And then you add it up to losing Davante Adams and how this offense is functioning, and everything is tight, everything is condensed, everything is forced into that horizontal plane. And you put it against this Bills defense, who Peter mentioned how strong they are with their communication and the scheme that they play. This is arguably the best defense in the NFL. If you want to name someone else, to each their own, but they are up there for that conversation of the best defense in the NFL. They are scheme versatile at this point. They have a tremendous front with what they can do on the defensive line in terms of rushing the passer, but also fitting the run with a light box because of the presence of that defensive line. We're starting to see Kyer Elam take a jump in his game. Christian Benford has gotten better. Dane Jackson has been solid. Taron Johnson is arguably the best nickel corner and slot corner in all of football. Tremaine Edmonds and Matt Milano are having tremendous years. Tremaine is having a tremendous year. I like that joke very much. That's why I wanted to work it in there. This Bills defense is so sound structurally and mentally and within their, on-field execution that it's going to be hard for this Packers team to live in that horizontal plane like they have. Exactly to Peter's point and what he said earlier in this episode, if they can't press vertically, if they can't stretch. I think they're going to try and lean on that run game, which makes sense. They do have 2 good running backs. But if you're looking at this team holistically from a DVOA perspective, they're 10th on offense overall in DVOA, which isn't terrible. 14th in the rush, 14th in the pass. They are able to create explosives in the run game with Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon to a degree, although smaller. He's not busting off too many 10-plus yard runs, but Aaron Jones is the proverbial quicker than a hiccup, and whether he gets the ball in his hands on a run or in the receiving game, he can take off in a hurry. He can run some routes. He can beat you vertically. He is definitely a threat. But this team is going to have to rely on their running backs if they want to make any kind of noise against the Buffalo Bills. And again, that makes sense. The Packers running backs this year, 6th in EPA per attempt, 5th in total EPA. They're 9th in yards after contact per attempt. They're 8th in broken tackle plus missed tackles forced percentage per attempt. And they're 10th in yards per attempt. Dillon and Jones are a tremendous 1-2 punch, however you want to look at it, your traditional kind of thunder and lightning pairing. The Packers are going to have to lean onto Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. So that's one of the premier matchups for this game. How do the Bills shut down that Packers run game and force – it's crazy that we're saying this, but how do you force the game onto Aaron Rodgers' shoulders and make them have to live through the pass? Because right now, this team is not built between Rodgers, the receiving group, and the structure of this offense. They're not built to threaten you vertically. They're not built to push down the field. They are living in this horizontal condensed space. And when you have a Bills defense that has tremendous communication and that will play these two high coverages, they've got the coverage numbers advantage because they're able to drop 7 because they only have to rush 4 to get pressure on you. And now you've got Tremaine Edmonds and you've got Matt Milano and Taron Johnson all in the second level. And if they want to play cover 2 and let their corners sit in those, underneath areas and create more chaos and let Hamlin and Poyer operate on the back end, that makes things even harder. This Packers offense, from a pass game perspective, doesn't have the ability to stretch you vertically, which means everything gets played tighter. It's harder. You have to squeeze. And this Bills defense is already doing that. Nate Tice talked about it last week when I had him on the show. He calls the Bills defense the boa constrictor defense because they just squeeze and squeeze. They squeeze passing lanes. They squeeze passing windows, run gaps. That's what they do. And the Packers offense is already making it easy for themselves to be squeezed. Not a great matchup for the Packers offense. But, I'm not saying this as like I'm paranoid or I'm worried. At some point, this Packers offense is going to find it a little bit. I do think Matt LaFleur is a good play caller and designer. Aaron Rodgers, I don't think he's completely burnt out and done. At some point, I wonder, when does that pendulum swing back into his favor? Maybe it is as simple as, a healthy Christian Watson coming back in and they have the speed of somebody to be able to take the top off the defense. Maybe this is the point too. Maybe it's the reshuffling of that offensive line. They've moved Elgin Jenkins back at left guard. You've got Runyon at right guard. You've got Zach Tom at left tackle, who played last week. But does Bakhtiari come back? Is he healthy? How does Neiman continue to progress at right tackle? You still have Josh Myers at center. They found a better combination with their offensive line against Washington. Peter talked to that. They got wrecked against the Jets. The Jets, led by Quinn and Williams, had their way with the Packers front, with the Packers offensive line, both in the run and in the pass. But the Packers line, they reshuffled it. They went back to what they should do. Jenkins is a tremendous guard. They had Jenkins at right tackle through the beginning of this year, trying to, move pieces around and do different things. I think they found a better matchup grouping. And in terms of putting their best 5 back out there, how does that group function? They're going to need to function at a high level in order to protect Rodgers and get this running game going. But if the Packers are going to make noise on offense, it's going to start with that running game because their pass game is so horizontal. I don't even think they have the ability to execute vertically right now. But if they do, Rodgers has the ability to uncork some big throws. He can still drop it in the bucket. He's had a couple throws these last couple of weeks. Even though they've lost and he's struggled, he's still had some throws that make you, turn your head and your jaw drop. So that's going to be a huge piece for this game, which, again, I don't think comes as a surprise to anyone. I want to switch to the other side of the ball. This Packers defense, a unit that, let's go with the comment here from Roy. Roy says Green Bay has a couple of speed receivers and they don't threaten deep. Oh, the chair. I wonder why. Part of it is those receivers haven't been too healthy. Watson is their big speed guy now, and he's been banged up, hammy injury, and hasn't been able to really fully get going. And even when he has, he hasn't instilled faith in Aaron Rodgers. He's dropped some throws, and Rodgers is huge into that chemistry piece, that rapport piece. He needs to have faith and trust in the guys that he's throwing the ball to, and I don't think he has it in Watson. And I know Dubs is the other guy who's going to threaten vertically. He has more faith in Dubs than he does Watson, but I don't think holistically he has faith in him. He trusts Allen Lazard, Robert Tonyan, and Randall Cobb. Cobb is out. So now he trusts Lazard and he trusts Tanyan, and he's force feeding them the ball. He won't, Peter mentioned it, and this is something I noticed on the film too. Rodgers won't let these plays develop. There's chances where he can create explosives and he can gouge defenses if he just waits a little longer. If he lets this receiver clear and then he fits it into this other receiver who's now in that vacated zone, he's not letting the play get there. He's not reading the play out. He's not going through his progressions. He's seeing Tanyan or Lazard get open right away, and he's just like, all right, cool, I'm taking it. Or he sees Romeo Doubs get open. He's like, all right, cool, I'm taking it. Or he forces it to Aaron Jones on the check down, even though the check down is the fourth option in that progression. He's not even going 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. He's snapping it and going 4 and just dumping it down to Aaron Jones. He's not giving the plays a chance to breathe. And I think a lot of it stems from the lack of faith that he has in the offensive line, and also in the receiving group as well, especially downfield. And then also mechanically, he's just not making throws. Even when he's got those throws that you're used to seeing him make, he's not this year. He's dirt in throws. He's inaccurate. He's not placing those balls that could, shoot the wings off a fly. He's been inaccurate. And his decision making and his ability to let the offense breathe is not there as well. And it's all a recipe that is not made for success. Oh, interesting comment here from Ned. Ned says, it seems Rodgers has interest in things greater than football, whatever that is. It's like he wants to transcend the game, and it seems like he's distracted. I will say, again, this is a complete assumption on my part and me reading into things that maybe I shouldn't be reading into. He doesn't seem like he's all there from a focus standpoint. He just seems like he's out there at times just being like, whatever. Or like Peter mentioned it, like he tries to prove a point with things. Like not that he'll make something fail on purpose, but something he'll make the play in a way that he can turn and look and be like, see, I told you. And like, he doesn't really have the ability to say that, but he's trying to find a way to say that, like be able to work things in almost in like a spiteful or a petty kind of way. And I don't think he's tanking or doing anything bad on purpose, but there is this weird dynamic that exists within Rodgers and within this Packers offense. And it's rearing its ugly head in a variety of ways and leading to some of the inefficiencies that we're seeing. And then inefficiencies on the defensive side of the ball. This Packers defense has disappointed me. This is a group that I liked coming into this year. I liked the draft pick of Quay Walker and pairing him with Devondre Campbell. I liked the draft pick of Devontae Wyatt. Rashawn Gary, I think he's still pretty under the radar for how good he is. Preston Smith is another good edge. And then you look in their secondary. I like the combination of Darnell Savage and Adrian Amos. You get Jair Alexander back this year, who is one of the best corners in all of football. Rasul Douglas had a great year last year. Eric Stokes had a great rookie year. This tremendous secondary, and Kenny Clark on the interior is tremendous. And even, you got Dean Lowry. They got these names and they got this team, but they've struggled in a variety of ways. This Packers defense is 25th in DVOA coming into this week, 11th against the pass, 31st against the run. And you look at this team get gouged. Sometimes they're not gap sound. That's really a source of their struggles. They go with a lot of 5 down fronts. And if you run gap scheme against that, and if they're out, you have the ability to take a gap from one side with a gap scheme. Say you're running a pin and pull. You pull a guard. That means, just one guard. That means you're moving a gap from the left and moving it to the right. It's easy to take advantage of these 5-man fronts when you do that. And then combined with the Packers' propensity of playing, 5 defensive backs on the field. They have 5 defensive backs on the field at least 64% of the time. They run light boxes 59% of the time. So this is a team that has to be very gap sound and structurally sound up front with their down linemen, with their front 5. It's usually 3 defensive linemen. So say like Kenny Clark and Jaron Reed and Lowry. And then you've got Preston Smith and Rashawn Gary on the edges. They'll play games. They'll run simulated pressures and do some nice designers off of that. But when you have those 5-man surfaces, those 5-man fronts, you put a lot on Campbell and Quay Walker to have to read what's going on and fill and flow properly. And that's not happening all the time. Campbell's getting caught up in traffic and trash at times. Quay Walker is still a rookie, and he's adjusting towards reading the NFL game and processing quickly and accurately. And these 5-down fronts, they'll get gashed at times and they'll give up big runs. And then you look at who they are from a passing perspective. This one was very interesting. Again, Jair Alexander has just come back. But from a DVOA perspective, the Packers defense is 28th versus number 1 wide receivers this year. Again, that's a little subjective from Football Outsiders, who they designate as the number 1, but it's relatively easy at this point. You look at Washington and you're like, okay, Terry McLaurin's the wide receiver one. And you look at the Jets and you're like, okay, Garrett Wilson's the wide receiver one. And you're able to relatively easily decipher who the number one wide receiver is. They're 28th against wide receiver ones in DVOA. They're 7th against wide receiver twos, 21st versus all other wide receivers, 18th versus tight ends, and 7th versus running backs. Now that you've got Jair Alexander back, you've got a defense that has kicked up their man coverage percentage. This defense runs man coverage at 37%, 37% usage rate. That is the 7th most in the league, and it's been increasing since Jair Alexander has come back. I know he gave up some completions to Terry McLaurin late in that game against Washington. Jair Alexander is tremendous. Man coverage corner, but also zone. His responsibility, he understands leverage, he understands spacing. He's good at route recognition and how to play off of that. Jair Alexander versus Stephon Diggs. Jair Alexander in this defense, a defense that is 28th in DVOA against wide receiver ones. Very interested to see how that plays out. Also, what the Packers have been doing in the secondary, because Jair Alexander came back. Before he did, you had Rasul Douglas on the outside and you had Eric Stokes on the outside. Now that Alexander is back, they've kicked Rasul Douglas inside to that nickel spot. He's a bigger bodied corner. He will function at times in that Taron Johnson role. He will kick down into the box at times, fill gaps, fill in terms of run support. That is a potential mismatch, although he's bigger for a nickel guy in terms of length and size and frame. But that is the matchup you will see on that Packers defense. They want to be in 5 defensive back looks, and those 5 DBs are Amos and Savage at the safety spot, Stokes at an outside corner, Jair at an outside corner, and Rasul Douglas at the slot corner spot. Jair can also kick inside if needed, but again, tremendous corner in Jair Alexander. I'm very excited to see if just from a football perspective, as a football fan, if they go man coverage and you get the Jair Stephon Diggs matchup in one-on-one, that has some real fireworks potential. Diggs is one of the best receivers in the entire NFL in almost every aspect of being a receiver, and Jair is close to being that from a cornerback perspective. Very excited to see what we could get in that matchup. And then talked about some of the run game a little bit. The Bills' run game has started to get better these last couple of weeks, and I think it's because they have gone and leaned back into the gap running scheme perspective. So against the Chiefs, the Bills ran gap runs. So those are your powers, your counters, your pin and pulls. Gap runs on 50%. They had a 50% usage rate of gap runs versus Kansas City versus 28% on the year. So a 22 percentage point jump against the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, I think part of that was designed for the Chiefs for that matchup, running right at Chris Jones and company. Chris Jones does not want to play run defense. He doesn't want people leaning on him and banging with him and driving him off the ball. They wore him down as that game went on. I also think the gap scheme is where this team needs to live. Zone takes some time. It takes chemistry. I think this offensive line, the more it stays healthy and gets to build some continuity, we'll see what happens with Spencer Brown, ironically, in terms of talking health here and continuity. But you need that chemistry to have proper zone blocking because of the ability to establish double teams at the first level, feel those double teams, and then decide who climbs to the second level. You're not having that with these gap runs. Now you do run the risk of getting blown off the line or penetration or somebody wrecking your gap run, which if that happens, because a gap run is designed to go to a specific hole, that can lead to some negative consequences versus a zone run where it's kind of like a choose your own adventure and a running back can just be like water and flow wherever. But the Bills started to lean a little bit more on these gap runs. They did it against Pittsburgh. They did it against Kansas City. Very interested to see if that continues coming out of the bye week and coming against a Green Bay Packers team that has struggled against the run. Again, 31st in DVOA against the run, and in particular has been gashed and gouged by gap runs. If the Bills can lean on that, very excited to see what happens with that. As I've said all offseason, I've said throughout the show, I've said it on the film room, the Bills need to run the football. That doesn't mean 50-50 split. That doesn't mean 60-40. It doesn't mean any of that. They need to be successful at running the football. They need that threat. They need that pivot in order to make life easier for Josh Allen, in order to give him a breather, in order to make defenses have to account for something else physically and more important mentally, to have that in the back of their mind, to make them honor play action a little more, to make them bite a little harder on the run action from an RPO, to make them have to potentially consider what personnel groupings they put out there. Because if the Bills throw out a heavier personnel 2 tight end package and they say, you know what? No, it doesn't matter. They're still going to pass it. We're going to stay in nickel versus them having to be like, oh, well, they can run out of this and they have a good run game. Screw it. Let's put 3 linebackers out there. And then you have the opportunity to check into a pass and put their linebackers in those base looks with the 3 linebackers or more into precarious positions, because now you can get to more of your menu based on the versatility you have on offense with those personnel groupings and with those alignments. There's a lot of positives that come from the run game. I've talked about it so much. And like Ron says here, they've had time to work on it. Yes, they had success with those gap schemes going into the bye. Now coming out of the bye, I'm very excited to see what this Bills run game looks like, because they have started to find an identity again, much like they did towards the end of last year with those gap scheme runs, pin and pulls. Everybody's heard it a million times at this point. And then you add that up with the Packers struggling to defend a run, their ability, or I should say their inability to be gap sound, and their propensity to get out gapped and moved and pushed around a bit. And also because they're a penetrating front, they're trying to get upfield. And if they get upfield in the wrong spot, or they get upfield on the backside and you're changing a gap, all of a sudden you have a numbers advantage leading out in front. You saw that time and time again in the Washington game, whether it was Antonio Gibson, whether it was Brian Robinson, when Washington was running those pin and pull runs, Green Bay was trying to get upfield and they're just simply pulling a guard. And all of a sudden now they've got 3 blockers on the right side against 3 defenders for the Packers. And that's a huge numbers advantage. And that spells doom for a defense. And gotta stop because we got a super chat. Ned, thank you very much for super chat again. I appreciate you supporting the show tonight. Ned comes in and Ned says, Ant, could you speak to the apparent lack of faith in Zach Moss in the run game? What is up with him? I don't think Zach Moss is as bad as a lot of people think. I know there's a significant part of Bills Mafia that anytime Zach Moss touches the ball thinks that spells doom. I think he's still the best pass protecting running back on this team. I think he's very good at being QB friendly when releasing out of the backfield and being a receiver. He's also had, a couple really strong standout moments from a positive perspective this year. The decision to scratch him against the Chiefs, I did find very interesting, especially with the nature of how they were going to attack this Chiefs team with more heavier personnel packages, with more runs. But I will say, if you're going to attack a defense more with gap runs like the Bills did against the Kansas City Chiefs, Devin Singletary is the better gap runner. Zach Moss is the better zone runner. The problem is Zach Moss doesn't have tremendous speed, so it hinders him a bit. But Zach Moss is the better zone runner. Devin Singletary is the better gap runner. I don't necessarily think it's a lack of faith, but I think it's more of a scheme fit at this point. If the Bills are going to go more pin and pull and they're going to go more power and counter, they're going to go with these gap looks, you're going to see more Devin Singletary. And if the Bills know they're going to do that, you have a higher opportunity, or the higher odds or probability, I should say, of scratching Zach Moss for a game. And then James Cook, we know he's had his ups and downs, but they like James Cook. And also he has a skill set that is not offered amongst any of the running backs in the Bills backfield. And so I think you couple all that together, and if the Bills are going to take this direction going forward with their gap runs, I think it spells more work for Devin Singletary. I think it spells more opportunity for Zach Moss to be scratched. Now, maybe it could have just been a bad week of practice. Maybe there was something else going on behind the scenes that we don't know in terms of why he was scratched versus Kansas City. Maybe we'll see all 3 running backs dress again versus Green Bay, which I do think is possible, given how much teams have been able to lean on the run against the Green Bay Packers. So maybe we're in for a heavy run game, and a heavy workload for multiple running backs, and we'll see, Zach Moss potentially strap up. But I think it's less of a lack of faith and more of a scheme fit and structure fit and matchup aspect in terms of how the Bills were going to attack in that Kansas City game. Now, we'll see what happens going forward. 1, do they stick with gap schemes and is Moss still scratched? 2, if they don't stick with gap schemes, does Moss get more work in terms of suiting up? Does he get more carries? So seeing the identity of this Bills run game coupled with the roster activations on game day will really start to shed a light on it. But for me right now, I think it's more structure and scheme than it is anything else. And I want to see how the Bills continue to run the ball. Like I said, the Bills need that pivot. I think they need that run game. You need to be able to throw rock, paper, scissors, as you folks know that I've said this entire offseason. Eventually, you're going to run into an opponent, probably in the playoffs, that is going to game plan the hell out of your passing attack and is going to game plan the hell out of Josh Allen. And yes, Josh Allen can play above the scheme. So can Stephon Diggs. So can Gabriel Davis. So can Dawson Knox when he's healthy. Yes, you've got a player that can transcend matchups and make you right even when you are supposed to be wrong, and make defenses wrong when they are supposed to be right. But at some point, when you're throwing rock nonstop and you're just crushing scissors left and right, at some point, someone is going to throw paper. And when they throw paper, paper covers rock. So you need the ability to throw scissors and shred the hell out of that piece of paper. That's what the run game is for this Buffalo Bills offense. In addition to just being a button that the Bills offense and Josh Allen can press, just to give him a bit of a breather. So it doesn't all have to be on his shoulders. So the entire playbook doesn't have to just be picture after picture of Josh Allen. That run game needs to be a pivot. They've started to gain success and traction with it against Pittsburgh, against Kansas City, because I think it's no coincidence, because they lean into more of a gap scheme. Very interested to see how that continues against a team that has been vulnerable, not only against the run in the Green Bay Packers, but vulnerable against gap schemes with their 5 down fronts and their ability to get out-gapped with how they can get maneuvered around. So I'm very interested to see that piece. The other matchup that I'm really interested to see, and Peter alluded to it earlier, just from a Green Bay perspective, the details. The details have been off for this team. Peter talked about it in a variety of plays, and it was similar to what I saw when I was watching the film. They're off by a hair. The timing between Rodgers and Doubs is off. Doubs' release is off. Rodgers' throw to Aaron Jones is just slightly behind him. The blocking up front, the guard is just slightly off, and they get outgamed, and an edge comes through easy on a twist or a stunt. They're slightly off in their coverage communication with Quay Walker and Devondre Campbell. I sent a tweet out earlier today about it, and Peter said the same thing. Quay Walker and Devondre Campbell both be the middle, and Campbell thinks Quay is going to do A, and Quay thinks he's supposed to do B. So he does B, and now you got a coverage blown in the middle of the field, and that leads to explosives. You will see it happen in Minnesota. It happened against the Giants. It happened against the Jets. It's happening with decent regularity for Walker and Campbell, although it has gotten better. They'll bust coverages in the middle because they're not on the same page with one another. Again, it's all these detail pieces, right? Blown assignments, mistakes in coverage. Defensively and offensively, this team has been prone to errors, and they have been a team that has not been paying fine attention to the details. They have not been smoothed out. They've been rough around the edges. And this is the team that especially on offense, we're used to seeing them be surgical. Like I mentioned earlier, they have been anything but this year on offense. They are hamstrung. They are capped. They are limited. They are operating in a very difficult, condensed, choked, hard space offensively. And defensively, they've been better, but they're still getting gashed. They're still misexecuting at times. So that details piece, right? I think, like Peter said, this is a team that does have talent. Like, don't let the record and losing to the Giants and the Jets and the Commanders fool you. That they still do have talent on the defensive side of the ball, on the offensive side of the ball. If Bakhtiari is healthy, he's one of the best left tackles in football. Jenkins at guard is legitimately one of the best guards in football with all pro potential. They've got some other guys functioning in now on the offensive line. Aaron Rodgers can still uncork them. Aaron Jones is one of the best running backs in football. A.J. Dillon is a tremendous number 2. I've already spoken about my love for Jair Alexander and a bunch of the other pieces on that defense and how it fits and how it works. But they're not executing the details, right? They're not. And it's not just fundamental things. It's high level, it's low level, it's basics, it's things that are complicated. They will have some fun things that they'll cook up on defense. They'll run a simulated pressure with a Tampa 2 invert with Darnell Savage, the safety, as that middle Tampa defender. And it's just, it's beautiful. And then they'll blow coverage 2 plays later. So it's that inconsistency on both sides of the ball. If the Packers execute and they pay attention to the details, I still think the Buffalo Bills are the better team, and I think this game favors the Buffalo Bills, but the Packers can make a run out of this thing if they execute the way that they are capable of. I still think they're limited without Davante Adams. I think they're limited with the lack of rapport and chemistry and confidence that Aaron Rodgers has in his wide receivers and in the offensive line at this point. And I do think they're susceptible to blown coverages and mistakes on the defensive side of the ball. But this team still has talent, and they can beat you if you give them the opportunity. Very interested to see how they start to, self-diagnose and self-scout. And like Ned says, a team can't fix that typically in 5 days. That is very true. It's hard to kind of just all of a sudden make everything better and blanket fix everything. But This is a team that has made quick turnarounds and changes before under Matt LaFleur these last several years. I don't think all of a sudden the Packers are going to become this team that, you know, they run the Bills out of Buffalo and they put up 50 and they look like the prince that was promised. And it's like, oh, okay, this is the Packers team. I think it'll be gradual, but I do think there are several steps they can take this game towards making more of an immediate type of turnaround and change. And, you know, like Mike says here, you know, the Packers are desperate, and he says he thinks the Bills will win a tight one, 27-24. And you know what, honestly, I think the Bills are the better team. I could see it being a tight game. I don't like to put score predictions on anything because I'm superstitious. You folks know this, but Packers have an ability to be a good team. And I know you can say that about anyone, but they genuinely have good players and they have good coaching. It's just not meshing, and it's not merging at this point in the year. We'll see if it can a little bit, but I do think this game favors the Buffalo Bills. Something else I want to talk about here on the Buffalo Bills as we start to move on to our next segment here. Stock up, stock down. This is a piece. I love this part of the show. I love every part of the show, to be honest, but some stock up, stock down. We didn't really talk about it too much last week because it was more of a, you know, Nate Tice focus in episode. And we talked about some things in that regard, but I wanted to hit more on some of these stock up, stock down pieces. I really wanted to just harken back to Leslie Frazier's game plan against the Kansas City Chiefs. And, you know, Nate mentioned it on last week's show, throwing those unscouted looks against the Chiefs. I don't think the Chiefs were prepared to see Saron Neal be used that much. I don't think they were prepared to see the Bills run those odd mirror packages, which were those 3 down fronts with Matt Milano as that aggressive spy. And the Bills used it in strategic moments and in strategic points and high leverage situations. The game plan was so well done. The game plan, and as John says here, yes, defense with an exclamation point. The game plan was so well executed. And when you've got a good bag and you've got tricks within that bag and you can deploy them as needed, like Leslie Frazier showed, it makes this defense, and it makes a team, makes any unit, but we're talking about the Bills defense here. It makes them so dangerous because now offenses have to account for those looks now, because you've shown an ability to throw those looks out there and be successful with them, but also puts a little bit of doubt in your mind in terms of, are they going to throw something in this game that we haven't seen? And then you pair that with everything the Bills did against the Chiefs from a multiplicity perspective in coverage. They're running cover 1 robber. They're running cover 1 lurk with the hole defender, and they're varying up who that low hole player is and where they're coming from. They're running cover 3. They're running cover 3 match. They're running quarters. They're running cover 4. They're running cover 2. They're running cover 6. They're locking the front side or back side and then running cover 2 on the other side or cover 4 on the other side. And they're doing all this while playing games up front with the front 4, while throwing in that odd mirror package. Sometimes they're just playing straight up 2-man and rushing 4. So much multiplicity on this Bills defense. And I think it starts with the design and the concoctions that Leslie Frazier has cooked up and is cooking up. And it adds that little bit of doubt, and it makes you that much harder to game plan for week in and week out. It was genuinely a masterclass for Leslie Frazier and the Bills defense against the Kansas City Chiefs. And that's going to need to continue as the Bills move forward in this year and potentially see the Kansas City Chiefs again come playoff time. But with that being said, I'm very interested to see what Frazier cooks up in this game coming up against Aaron Rodgers and this Packers team, because he's been so good at pressing the right buttons, turning up and turning down the right dials at the right times in the right moments to lead this defense being arguably the best defense in all of football right now heading into this primetime game against Green Bay. So his stock is way, way, way up. Also on the defensive side of the ball, Kaiir Elam. Going back and I watched the tape again, was going over my notes from the Kansas City game. Kaiir Elam has really taken a jump in his game. He's taken a gradual jump little by little each week. I know he got picked on a bit in that Pittsburgh game, but I've been somebody who, I didn't want to put like water on the fire, but I did pump the brakes a lot this year when it came to the talk of Kaiir Elam. There, especially early on after, I believe, the Baltimore game. People were throwing out, you know, PFF grades and stats of how much he's been targeted, and he's given up no catches and no yards against, and all these stats and figures. But I thought they lacked context, and they didn't point to what was going on in the tape. And there were times early in this year, multiple times, where he was getting beat and there was somebody left open, but the throw would get thrown in the dirt, or the pressure would get there and the throw wouldn't get there. There were times where he was getting beat, or also he was playing so conservatively in coverage within the scheme, which is what's asked of him, but even being more conservative himself on top of that, where he wasn't really given an opportunity to potentially be targeted or be thrown at, or he was bailing so hard that the throw was just completed underneath and the Bills were rallying and tackle. But what you saw in the Kansas City game, because the Bills are running so many coverages, you saw Kaiir Elam function in a variety of ways and wear a variety of hats. And I was very impressed with his hand technique, his hand placement, his footwork, his hip fluidity, his change of direction. You saw him in off, in press man, in zone, in a variety of ways just function already like a solid to high end number 2 corner. And I think now you're starting to see, I don't care about the numbers because numbers can lie and people can lie and make anything seem any way they want. When you throw out numbers, you can cherry pick and you can lie and you can mislead. And that's how incorrect narratives get formed. But when you sit and watch the film, he's made progressions little by little each week. And I thought the Kansas City game really showed a lot of positives from Kaiir Elam from a technically sound aspect and from a technique perspective in his game, let alone the interception he makes on that first drive for the Chiefs, where you just see the athleticism and the size and the strength as he just goes up and rips that down in the back of the end zone for a potential game-changing interception and momentum swinger early on. I think you're starting to see him come into his own a little bit. Rough around the edges in training camp, as was to be expected, a bit grabby and needed to adjust to the NFL game. I think you're starting to see him get better week in and week out. I still don't think he's there to the point where he is hands down the number 2 corner whenever Tre'Davious White comes back. I also think they're going to ease Tre'Davious White in. I like what Christian Benford has done, and I still like what Dane Jackson has done, and I know the coaching staff loves Dane Jackson, but Kaiir Elam is starting to already show, little glimpses and hints at being another quality first-round corner for the Buffalo Bills in a different way than Tre'Davious White does. They're different styles of corners. They're different kinds of players. But I think he's starting to reward the Bills week in and week out for picking him at that spot. And this is a matchup where he and this Bills secondary as a whole, they have the advantage against the Packers wide receivers. It would be very nice to see Kaiir and the secondary as a whole, but, just focusing on Kaiir for this stock up segment, see him have a dominating performance, see him get into the kitchen of these Packers receivers, jam, press, get physical, use his speed and use his length, and really just affect this game from the line of scrimmage and deep, and just be an absolute nuisance to the Packers wide receivers and to Aaron Rodgers. Last stock up that I got for this week, I mentioned it in different moments and spurts in this episode, the gap runs. The gap scheme runs for the Buffalo Bills. We saw it against Pittsburgh, and again, we saw it against Kansas City. 28% on the year, but in that Kansas City Chiefs game, 50% gap run usage rate. The pin and pulls, getting Mitch Morse out into space, getting Ryan Bates out into space, Spencer Brown out into space as well before he got banged up. Seeing the Bills lean on the athleticism of their linemen up front. Mitch Morse is one of the best centers in all of football out there in space with his athleticism and his understanding of leverage and how to work out in space and open grass against defenders that are off ball. Ryan Bates, tremendously athletic, good movement guy. Spencer Brown as well. I don't want to hit on him too much because I don't know, his injury status kind of muddies the waters a little bit, but the Bills really leaning into that. I got to stop. I saw this comment pop up. John says, I couldn't see the tree very well on my phone, but it looks superb. Thank you, John. I appreciate you. I'm actually going to pull down the banner so everybody can appreciate it. So I got a little Halloween tree, little jack-o'-lantern tree topper, some purple and orange garland, some little jack-o'-lantern lights there. Appreciate you, John, for recognizing the tree. You're a good person. I greatly appreciate you for that. Everybody loves the tree. A huge fan of the tree. Again, this show just exists so we can do the tree. As I mentioned last week, I'm also a fan of the adorable little cat with the pumpkin and the purple hat. Oh, that rhymed. Look at that. Oh, I did it again. Oh, it's crazy. All right, let me stop. The Bills being able to find an identity in the run game with that gap scheme, big stock up. And I mentioned it as one of the matchups to watch this week. Can the Bills sustain a running game against a Packers team that has been gouged in the run, but in particular, a Packers defense that has been gouged against gap runs? It seems like a perfect marriage, a team that has struggled against gap runs versus a team that is starting to find success in gap runs this year like they did last year. Want to see what's going on. I want to see how that starts to merge and mesh. But again, it's a big time stock up, those gap scheme runs. And this running game, I would say as a whole, coming out of that Pittsburgh game and really leaning on it again against Kansas City, they gouged the Chiefs time and time again with some really good gap runs. especially from Singletary. They mixed in some zone as well, but the gap run scheme is a big stock up. Stock down, I really only have one. I mentioned a couple things these past weeks, and I said some things on Twitter also during that Chiefs game. The slot wide receiver position has been hit my table there. The slot wide receiver position has been an unstable one for the Buffalo Bills this year. I think you are seeing the roller coaster effect that not having Cole Beasley in the slot can have. We saw some up and down play from Jamison Crowder. We've seen up and down play from Isaiah McKenzie. I would like to see some more Khalil Shakir if McKenzie can't reduce some of those inconsistencies. We know the juice that McKenzie has. We know his ability and the coverages that he works against. I think he's gotten better this year at working against zone, but I still think he's very much a man beater and a single high coverage beater like he was in New England last year towards the end of the year in that game that he just gouged the Pats and destroyed Miles Bryant when Belichick wouldn't switch up the coverage. But I think Shakir could potentially be a stabilizing force in that slot, and they need that. They have, good point from Dobbs saying that Diggs has been awesome out of the slot this year. Yes, he has. His slot usage is up 17% versus what it was last year. Dorsey has leaned on Stephon Diggs in terms of moving him around the formation, putting him in motion, using him as that move guy, but also getting him two-way goes by putting him in the slot and creating matchup problems with personnel and alignment, getting him matched up on linebackers and allowing him to run option routes and just making defenders look foolish on the interior, or drawing coverage to the middle with bracket coverages and then allowing Josh to pick on the outside. So Dorsey's done a good job at maneuvering Stephon Diggs around and using him more in the slot. Again, 17% percentage point jump, 37% in the slot this year versus like 2021 last year. So that usage has been good. So that helps, but I think they do need that consistent slot piece that isn't just Stephon Diggs. I think I would like to see more Khalil Shakir at this point. This position, again, that slot receiver position is stocked down for me just because of the volatility and inconsistency. It's the up and downs, the roller coaster effect. It's the drops. It's the not being on the same page with Josh. It's the not settling down when you read the coverage and instead you keep going and Josh has to make a difficult throw, or the opposite. You know, you settle down when the defender's there and instead you need to keep going and Josh is expecting you to keep going. I think also some making tough catches in contact. We've seen both Crowder and McKenzie have some contested catches where they would get rocked and the ball comes loose, and sometimes it leads to a turnover, sometimes it just leads to an incompletion. And I think that's a piece that was very underrated in Cole Beasley's game. The lack of yards after catch for him, I think people attributed that more to his skill set than they did the role in this offense. The slot receiver position is very much at times just like, hey, it's 3rd and 6. I need you to get to 7. You're going to be in between these 3 defenders. I'm going to throw you the ball. You're going to catch it, and you're going to get rocked right away. Beasley was very reliable. You know, you heard that 3rd and Cole. And I think the Bills can still patchwork it together and maneuver around Cole Beasley not being there anymore and being in that role. But they need consistency at that position. I would like to see more Khalil Shakir. I am not saying jettison Isaiah McKenzie at all. I think he still has juice and a skill set that is valuable, but I would like to see him more just from a gadget perspective. Give me more jet motion from him. Give me more orbit motion. Put him in the backfield and leak him out into the flats. Run screens to him, all these type of, and I don't think he's just a gadget player, but he can be a chess piece when used in that gadget world. And if he can be a stabilizing piece in the slot, kudos to him and tip your hat to him. But I would like to see more Khalil Shakir at this point. I think he's needed. That slot position needs more consistency for the Buffalo Bills. It's really one of the only low spots on this Bills team from a receiver perspective. You know, if they want to go heavier personnel and go 2 tight ends and put Knox in the slot or Quentin Morris, I'm very much okay with that. I like the scheme versatility piece of going with 2 tight ends, or even Reggie Gilliam. Reggie Gilliam, if you put him in the slot and he gets matched up against a linebacker, he actually has the matchup advantage because he's not just a fullback. He can run quasi H-back tight end routes, and he's got some speed and athleticism to his game. But either way, no matter how you slice it, if you're going with bigger personnel, if you're going with traditional, if you're going with Stephon Diggs, whoever it is, they need more consistency and stability out of that slot wide receiver position as they go forward. So that's something to keep an eye on. And one of the only few stock downs that I have for this Buffalo Bills team as they head into this primetime Sunday night game against the Green Bay Packers. That's going to do it for us here on this episode. Real quick before everybody starts to bounce, now that we're winding down here. If you haven't already, please, and thank you, drop a like on this video. Likes go a tremendously long way towards helping myself and the entire channel to track and trend in front of more eyes and ears. We support all, or we appreciate all the support that you folks give us in every way, shape, and form. And like I always say, we're trying to ride this until the wheels fall off. So the more support we get, sometimes in the corny, shilling out ways, like asking for likes, you would be surprised how long it goes towards helping us to achieve that goal of getting bigger and growing and progressing more in this game. I want to thank everyone who joined me live here on this episode, starting with my guest, Mr. Peter Bukowski, host of Locked On Packers and creator of The Leap, tremendous newsletter, and a guy who's involved in a ton of projects, like he mentioned as he left earlier in this episode. Tremendous guest, very insightful, X's and O's and scheme and structure. A guy who I'm a genuine fan of, and I appreciate his work and the way he sees and approaches the game. So big thank you to Peter for coming on the show and making the time to jump on and talk Bills Packers and give us that insight into the Packers. I want to thank all you folks who rode with me live here on this episode. It's awesome. Always awesome to see the engagement. You can tell we're starting to wind down, so I'm stumbling over my words. It's always awesome to see the engagement of all of you in the live chat with myself, with each other, the appreciation for the guests, the appreciation for me, all of that stuff. Well, I appreciate you, Mike. Thank you very much for saying good show tonight, and thank you, Mike. I appreciate you. It's always awesome to see the engagement and the activity from you folks in the chat and the little number up top that shows how many people are live and present. So that's awesome. Thank you very much. If you did not watch this live, if you are watching later, listening later on any one of the podcasting apps or platforms, appreciate you, T-Dobbs. Thank you very much. That's cool too. Watching later, listening later, whatever have you, please rate and review and subscribe if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever audio platform. Ratings and reviews are tremendously helpful. You can give honest feedback, or if you just want to cop out and just give a 5-star, that's also accepted. I appreciate you either way. Again, if you're watching later on YouTube, please drop a like on this video, and also word of mouth. Also, I'll appreciate Hans. He said logged in real quick just to click like. I appreciate you. Again, word of mouth is always a tremendous asset and help as well. So tell your family and friends and loved ones about this show, about the team, anything and everything. I appreciate literally any and every ounce of support. It could be a like, it could be a follow on Twitter. It could be you just telling your cousin or your friend, like, hey, have you ever watched this show? It's pretty awesome. Like for X, Y, and Z, check it out. Anything and everything. Appreciate you folks tremendously. If you hate this show or you hate me, I apologize, but tell your enemies about the show and try and ruin their day with me or this show. Anyway, slice it. I appreciate you folks. I hope you and your family and friends and loved ones are all doing well, staying safe, taking care of one another, being kind to one another. If you are going to the Bills game this Sunday, got a potential opportunity to get ugly early if you're tailgating starting at noon or 1 and you're out all day. So be safe. Ooh. Nice. Oh, man, there's a lot of awesome comments coming through. I appreciate the toodles, appreciate the kind words. I love John saying love blueberry muffins. We're getting off on a tangent here. Be safe if you're going to the Bills game on Sunday. It's going to be a raucous atmosphere, prime time, a fun, cool team coming in led by one of the best quarterbacks of all time, and an opportunity to tailgate for a very, very, very long time. So be safe. If you folks are going to the game, again, be kind to one another, take care of one another. I will see you next week for another episode of Disguise Coverage. Godspeed, and as always, go Bills.